What's up, Nubians? Welcome to techn00bians, part of the Geekish Network. This is your weekly deep dive into video games, steeped in the blackest blacks. For those of you who don't know, techn00bians is your live stream and podcast hosted by Black technology professionals, where we discuss the what, where, and how you can get into this world of technology, specifically video games. With me today, I have this producer, sleuther, and deducer, Shanae.
Hey, folks.
And we have a special guest today. We have Timothy Chalamet. No, that's
that's
just Travis.
No, wrong. Yeah.
I've heard I should say something about the spice must flow, but I haven't seen Dune yet. So
he who controls spice controls the universe.
Okay. So you control the universe. Is that what we're saying here, Travis?
Say what?
You control the universe.
You know,
if you control the universe, Travis, where's the complaint department? I got a few things I would like to lodge.
We hear you.
Is there a round? Is that round file? Is that what I'm looking at right there? That's the round file of the complaint department.
I like the employment of the royal we also like.
We hear you.
But anyways, I am
not even a minute now. We want to fight you, Travis.
Yeah, right. I am your host, Cherie, and we are techn00bians. We're here every week to sustain, inspire, and nurture successful creative technologists in the pursuit of Black excellence and content development. So, all right, folks, we're going to do this the way we normally do. We're doing our news segment, and then we'll do a long topic. This week, we are talking about fantastic high-functioning teams and how to build them. Came up with that name myself. I feel pretty proud about that. I'm really excited to talk about this because I think this is really important for the world of technology, video games in general, that you have and understand the concept and the benefits of high functioning teams. But before we get into that, we're going to talk some other tech and gaming news with our news segment, Techn00bians. Okay, so let us kick this thing off here. All right, I have a quick story I would like to highlight for everybody, which is about the PS5. I know we talked the PS5 a bit last week, and I think we even mentioned because they're, it's not really a surprise that it's kind of been a little bit of a shortage and a few people haven't been able to get the system they want to get. Yeah. Well, somehow last month, the PS5 actually outsold the Switch. This is the first time that another console has outsold the Switch in 33 months. This is a 33-month consecutive streak in the US. And the last month, the PS5, I love it. Do you have Sony stock or something, Travis?
I'm just trying to figure out if the dance is for Sony or against Nintendo.
Yes.
Or is it column A, column B? Okay, all right.
Yes.
Well, yes. So the PS5 outsold. I said outsold the Switch. The Switch has been, the best-selling console, outselling both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, during the launch period. But during the month of September, Sony somehow did. I just want to ask how. I don't actually know. I don't actually understand. Isn't there a chip shortage?
Maybe they're getting they're getting their feet underneath them for the production shortage and stuff too. It's pretty amazing. This is not to say I haven't looked at the numbers or anything like that, but the Switch hasn't been easy to come by either, right? Yeah. But hey, this is like a 1 week turnaround. Like last week we're talking about, hey guys, you might have to wait a little while, but you're not really missing that much. And this week everybody got their PS5s. So
basically,
that's great.
Basically, no shade on that. Hey,
YouTube can enjoy five games.
Yeah, YouTube.
Everybody was like, "Yo, Shanae said, let's pause for a second."
That's why it's called the PS5 because it's got 5 games.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm above console wars or anything like that, but those kind of bore me kind of thing too. So I'm glad that more people are able to get access to consoles and stuff. It's a pain in the butt. I hate that these shortages have been plaguing us for literally the last 2 years. The pandemic, as great as it's been for folks who work in the game industry, has been really hard on people who want to buy consoles and want to buy games because it's changed up the entire purchasing expectations and process and strategy and stuff like that too. So it's been harder for folks who are trying to get stuff into the actual channel so people can buy the products and buy the games, buy physical copies of it. And then it makes it really hard for folks to actually get a hold of it. Plus, there's a lot of folks like buying them up and scalping them, trying to flip them on eBay and stuff too. And that does not make this whole thing easy. So
it's just been interesting to see like this whole pandemic, like what it's done to our industry in general and how it's pushed a lot of things forward in crazy ways. I mean, I just don't know what to think about it. I mean, it's crazy when I think about just the leaps in how we work, how we communicate, how we talk. These past 2 years have been just like a massive step in that direction.
No, absolutely. And I'm guessing also since PlayStation was able to outsell Nintendo this time, we've got that big blockade that's down in the LA ports right now. Supply chain just totally backed up. It's like that. But apparently everything they unloaded was a PS5. So that must have been that must have been it, y'all. Sorry you can't get your favorite brand of toothpaste or anything like that. This Okami statue I literally bought 6 months ago is still sitting somewhere on a boat, but
also your furniture. Yeah,
furniture, yes.
PS5.
Yeah, I'll get a couch in January.
So that's what you need to do. Instead of going to the store to get a PS5, go to the ports and just
don't do that, folks.
But I mean, apparently. So
someone will drop a giant shipping container on your butt.
All right, let's move on. Travis, you've got a story for us.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. Look, Google decided that they're going to lower the Play Store subscription share to 15%. Says, it's lowering its subscription from 30% to 15%. I think this is going to be the beginning of the end for a lot of exclusivity when it comes to, pricing. I mean, Apple's getting really aggressive, because it's almost a tax on tax on tax on tax, right? I'm just excited to see where this is going because it's going to start democratizing the whole industry in brand new ways now that you're actually seeing this sort of discounting going on.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think we had a good conversation about this. Was it a couple weeks ago? I think just in general, just everything around the Epic Apple lawsuit, I think has just really put this in the forefront. Yeah. And it's interesting to see like this sort of goes. It goes to in line with what Travis was saying earlier. Like, there's been some big sweeping changes in these last 2 years. Not all of them were caused by the pandemic, but you know what? Like, we're going to remember them in association with the pandemic because this stuff is going to be things that, like, it's not going to be short-term changes. It's going to be short-term, but it's going to be a lot of long-term ripples here. Yep. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because, like, as you start seeing folks lower their cut, like that's going to have those ripple effects as well. Like, I wonder how many folks are going to stay at that 30% level, like when you've got that 15% coming in there too. So,
how much do you think this was because of the whole Epic dust up, right?
I feel like
I feel like it was at least 15% because of that. Maybe 30%.
At least 15%. I mean, here's my question. Like, Apple, of course, is not doing this. I'm not saying Apple, Google. They're not. All these companies aren't doing this out of the kindness of their heart. Like 15%. Like, that's not anything to sneeze at. Where are they making that up? That's what I'm kind of curious. They got to make it up somewhere. They're not just going to just take this.
It's a pretty sizable cut, going from 30% to 15%. Like they're cutting their take in half, right?
Yeah.
But, a lot of it, they might find other ways to make it up and stuff too. But they also, there was, like, I think our last conversation, Travis was talking about there's a real big argument as to like what they're doing to earn that 30%, right? But yeah, like, I mean, I think a lot of this, like, honestly, like the reason we're seeing the movements here is not just because of the Epic Apple lawsuit, but it's also because of global legislation and stuff as well. I think South Korea just passed a law. The European Union was looking at various litigation, various countries overseas. We often talk we're often very America-centric when we think about this, but all of these companies and all of these things are very, very much global, and their ecosystems are very different. than the American ecosystem too. Their legal systems are very different than the American legal system, and how they go about regulating companies. So these companies want to continue to be global. They're going to have to also we're going to see some ripple effects that will probably affect us based off of a law that is passed. A butterfly flapping its wings in South Korea will impact stuff over here as well.
Yeah. The butterfly is like government oversight.
Exactly. Government oversight butterfly.
or a judge or something like that. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned, Travis, that the Apple lawsuit probably had some kind of impact on this. And I know, we were just chatting a little bit before in the pre-show. But I mean, we've talked about this for a few weeks now, right? Or a few months now, I guess it's gone on here about the impact that lawsuit could have on the industry. And while it didn't seem like it was, a net, I guess probably overall it was smaller than what could have happened, what the judge could have ruled. There's still definitely lasting impact, right? I mean, and Apple, I know that Apple's appealing the ruling. Epic is also appealing the ruling. Basically, there's appeals all around.
There's appeal on everything.
But I mean, Apple has still gone ahead, to start updating their terms of service, letting developers know, letting people know that developers can direct them to other payment forms, methods, stuff like that. So
imagine that, right? Yeah, they're like, hey, there's a way that you could possibly get this at a cheaper price if you so desire. I mean, if you want to. I mean,
but if you want to.
The crazy part about that? The crazy part about that, if you really think about it, doesn't that strike you as shady?
What
it strikes me that whole how you notify someone, there might be some cheaper options, right? As a consumer, you're sort of trained to be dubious a little bit. So if you try to pay and someone says that you can save a little money, you'll be like, what do I gotta do? Give me a blood sample.
Yeah, I guess overall, what it really is doing, it's allowing developers, they can now go and tell their consumers, hey, buy from us. Yeah, Apple probably is they're going to hide it in their terms of service. They're just going to quietly whisper it from across the room.
The terms of the 25-page terms of service that ain't nobody read.
That nobody reads. You know
what this reminds me of, which is interestingly enough, you order off of DoorDash. There's a lot of controversy around DoorDash too, which has become way, obviously more popular during the pandemic. And I remember the first time we ordered from DoorDash, from a restaurant, and we open up the bag of the food, and there's a little insert in there. It's hey, we've got a website too. You could totally order from our website. And I was like, oh, but I ordered from Let me look at their website. Oh, everything's $2 cheaper on your website. Oh, well, I'm going to order from your website next time. That's what this feels like right here. It's I get these inserts and they're don't forget, Suavecito's got our own website. Also, we've got horchata. I'm yeah, I think I'm going to order from your website instead of DoorDash next time. We get more items and at a cheaper price. And I feel like it's going to be the same thing. These developers are going to be hey, we got the horchata over here.
But you know what? I mean, it's good. I mean, at least it allows developers, they can look at it and say, hey, sure, there's going to be a lot of people who probably still stay within the Apple ecosystem because they don't care about marketing emails or read any of that stuff or whatever. And it's just easier. And maybe they just have money to burn. I don't know.
It might just be ease of use too, right? Sometimes I will order from DoorDash because sometimes it is a lot more straightforward. It's like that too. It's a one-stop shop for stuff, if I want to do a group cart or something like that, it provides additional options and stuff too.
Yeah.
I guess it just reminds me of how I just feel sort of, put upon when I click purchase and they be like, yo.
Are you sure though?
Want to save some money?
Yeah,
I got the hookup.
I got some watches over here. What are you buying?
Yeah,
right. By the way, can I mention as well, because it kind of reminds me of, and I know this is, I don't know how big an issue this is nowadays, but I remember back when I was working at EA, and there was always that adversarial relationship between game developers and other sellers GameStop, right? Because GameStop will they'll sell the new game, and they'll sell like the used copy that somebody bought on like day one. They finished
$5 less.
Returned it. Yeah, and the used copy is $5 less.
And they licked it. They licked it.
But like, I remember like getting into some debates with some of my, my coworkers, because a lot of people were like, GameStop should give game developers some of that money. And I said, why? Why would they do that? Like, honestly, because I'm like, let's think about this. This is capitalism. I understand that like, maybe we want them, but why would they do that if that's their business? I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just saying that's their business. Why would they do it? And I said, honestly, maybe what this does is it forces companies to innovate. And I thought it was brilliant when EA came up with like the whole like EA online pass thing, where it's like, hey, you're buying old games or whatever, used copies, but you still got to pay us to use our servers.
Yeah,
it makes
sense. It was actually fair.
Like, I was like, that probably wouldn't have come up if GameStop was like, yeah, we'll give you some of the money. It's like, no, it costs them to innovate. So I want to see what Apple does to innovate to try and keep people in their ecosystem, as opposed to just resting on like, their laurels and saying, well, we're used to people they don't go anywhere else because they can't,
Yeah, Cherie, would it shock you that $10 was exactly GameStop's piece?
It was, right?
That's exactly what it was.
By the way, Travis, you talked about like if you bought that brand new or almost brand new copy that someone licked it. If you're walking into a GameStop, you've already made a compromise on what your hygiene level is going to be for that day. Like you touched a doorknob, you definitely someone licked that at some point. Like, if you dare pick up a game, somebody probably licked the outside. Like, just dude, wash your hands afterwards. Like, if the pandemic has taught us anything,
I just didn't like CDs with streaks in them. I just didn't.
Like, is this scratched or did?
Yeah, I don't want to say.
What is that? When we went down to San Jose last weekend day, I was thinking, I saw the GameStop there. For a second, I was like, maybe I'll go into this GameStop. I honestly don't buy any physical games anymore.
I don't.
The only reason I thought about
Ain't it great?
Yeah, I thought about going to the GameStop to be like, let me see what toys they have.
I thought about that too, but then also like, I don't need to buy any more toys.
You're good.
I'm good.
in the industry, I just hated GameStop. I hated them. I hated them because it was just like when you ask them like, hey, do you have X game? And they'd be like, did you pre-order? No, I did not. And then they'd be like, and I'm like, is this a pre-order store or is this a retail store?
See, Travis, you just were using the GameStop wrong, because they would ask me, did you pre-order? I'm like, hell yeah. And where's my pre-order item? Also, I got $5 off, didn't I? Also, while I'm here, where's your big book? I'd like to go ahead and pre-order like 6 more things. I was their best friend. They love me. They're just like, oh, I'm making all my quotas right now.
She would literally take the book and ask them to see what's coming out. And then like, as they're going through, she'd be like, I'm pre-ordering this, I'm pre-ordering this, I'm pre-ordering this. And she would just pre-order everything.
Yeah, because you know what? They would text me and be like, yo, this game's coming out tomorrow. You want to come in and pay for it? I'm like, I absolutely do. And that's what I actually do when games come out. I don't know when games come out anymore. I don't get physical copies of them. I just, every once in a while, find myself on a digital storefront. I'm scrolling, I'm like, oh, that's out now. Yeah. Okay, yes, I guess I'll pick up Alan Wake, which I picked up last night, by the way.
But to answer your question, yes, I do love the fact that it's all digital now. Like,
it's pretty great.
Yeah, I actually, when I bought my Switch, the first Switch, not the newest one, not the OLED, I bought a physical copy of Breath of the Wild. And I just was so annoyed for the longest time after I'd like just switched to everything digital that I had this physical copy of Breath of the Wild. So when we bought my dad a Switch, I was like, I'm just gonna give him my physical copy of Breath of the Wild. I'm gonna download the digital one.
I also have a physical copy of Breath of the Wild. It has been in my Switch for 4 years.
I have nothing in my Switch. Yeah.
I just don't take it out. So,
my child has my Switch, and I don't care.
But you still called it your Switch, though. It's not her. You didn't say I gave her my Switch. You said my child has my Switch.
I guess it is.
Just noting the language.
I was like, I literally don't care. We already
Yeah.
You got a little bit of Nintendo. You got a little Nintendo love. A little bit.
Yeah, he's all right. We got one more story here. Shanae, you got a story for us?
I do have a story. So this is coming from via game developer. I think it was Jason Schreier who was reporting to Bloomberg. Epic apparently had a policy that was a pandemic policy where they would allow employees to take every other Friday off. People seem to like that, but they just announced that they are ending that policy, and now people are not happy. When asked about it, like Epic said, this was always intended to be a temporary measure, and we really want to encourage people to take time off. But when employees are asked, they run into this thing that I've actually encountered myself too, which is like people don't want to take their time off because they feel like they're like I'm on a team, and if I take time off, then I've let my team down, and so that means I shouldn't take time off. And then people wind up at the end of the year with like 250 hours at the cap, and you're like, you didn't take. Wait, it's been 365 and a quarter days, right? How many days off did you take? None? What?
Yep.
So it's interesting because it's another example of like companies and how they were sort of changing their policies to work within the pandemic. And I think a lot of companies have run into the same issue, and they've been, we talked was it last week or week before last about the 4-day work week that IDOS Montreal is moving to. I think also a Bugsnax developer, Young Horses, also just went to a 4-day work week. But as people are starting to see an end to the pandemic, they're starting to sort of roll back some of that stuff. And employees who've gotten used to this last 18 months, almost 2 years of new processes are not happy about it. So
imagine that.
They had to know, it couldn't have been a surprise, right? Like, I hope this was not a surprise to them that they're giving employees about 2 days off a month, like at no cost. And like, suddenly they're going to end it. And then they're surprised that people are not happy about it. I mean, come on.
It's like, I have no idea how it was rolled out or anything like that. I mean, I think we've all probably been in an instance at some point in our careers and stuff like that, where we're just like, wow, that could have been handled better, management.
Here's a question I guess I have about it. Obviously they implemented this policy, and it was more around like a humanity-based policy, right? It's like, obviously people are going through a lot of stuff with the pandemic. This is giving people a little bit of time to be able to adjust, to be able to relax, a lot of different things probably that people could use that additional time off for, right? I'm kind of curious, like, did they ever do anything that like to track like productivity or how it impacted their metrics, or anything like that? As opposed to just saying like, you know what, we don't want to actually like give people these free days off anymore because the pandemic is over. So we're just going to claw it back. I would love if we actually started like, companies really focused on like outcome-based, management here. And actually, I'm just curious if like, is the reason why they, they clawed it back because they just didn't want to do it anymore, and now they're just resting on it was always intended to be temporary? Or do they actually see some kind of like negative impact on like productivity or something like that? My guess is it's probably the former, but I'm just being cynical. So
it's a really good question. I don't know, honestly, and I wish I had the answer to those questions. The thing I always think is really really interesting is, I hear a lot of during this pandemic, I hear a lot of talk about like, oh, this policy was always intended to be temporary, and I'm like, what's your definition of temporary? Right. It's been 18 months. Like, this mess is permanent right now. It might be permanent with an asterisk next to it, but we can't say it's temporary because like we're still in the middle of a pandemic and we don't know when it will end. So you can't be like, it's a temporary policy that's just during like a 5-year-long pandemic. Like, that's not temporary. There's folks who got this job and have probably been under that policy for their entire employment. Yeah. And then it's like, oh wait, I don't get every other Friday off, but that was mentioned to me in the onboard with the during my onboarding, or it was one of the things the recruiter told me was like a perk, right? Yeah. So it's like, you're gonna like, obviously, it's not just like people being greedy and saying, oh, I want to take every other Friday off because I like being a lazy game developer or something. Like, no, we're actually still in the middle of a global pandemic. People are like really adjusting their lives around working remotely and around like managing their households and their families and their health and their mental and physical health, all this stuff. And Yeah, actually having an extra day or two off a month is like, that's really nice. Actually, that actually really does help people. Like that can be like life or death for a lot of folks, right? Like it's the difference between feeling like you're actually hanging on and actually like have things maybe not in control, but like you sort of play at it versus just being completely out of control and just being like, well, my life is chaos.
My life is
Travis, so well said, Shanae. So I can't even add any more to that. That was just perfect.
You know, I have so many strong opinions about this, y'all. Like I literally, I've mentioned this before, but like I did a talk just a couple of weeks ago at the Game Devs of Color that was specifically about this. It was specifically about the idea that we keep calling like, oh yeah, you're working from home. You're working from home. I'm like, nah, man, we're not working from home. We're remote workers. Like for real, working from home is something I would do like at a coffee shop every once in a while. Like, oh, let me just order my Cascara Fizz and my Liege waffle at Blue Bottle, and I'm working remotely today. I'm working from home, right? Working from home from a local coffee shop. Like working from home was a perk. Like this is not a perk. This is literal survival for us and for businesses too, right? So, yes. You know, I'm just saying, like, you know, management folks, think about it. Go back and watch my talk, and think about it. Like when we think about like, hey, are we trying to pull people into why are we trying to get people in the office? Why are we pulling these things back? Why are we clawing these things back? And is it really worth it? Because, you know, and we're actually probably right in the middle, right smack dab in the middle of a worker movement right now. Yeah. We see it all the time. People are taking control of their work life in ways we have not seen in my entire lifetime. So, managers, think about that. Is it worth an extra 2 days? I don't know. Maybe it is.
It ain't thinking about you. Trust me. Ooh, it's crucial out there. It is so crucial out there right now.
You know, there's a lot of opportunity out there for folks, and there's a lot like, in the tech industry and games. A lot of companies are going like full-time remote. Like you can work like, and that's open up so much opportunity, especially when we talk about like marginalized folks and the places where the jobs typically live. The jobs typically in the past have lived where? San Francisco, Seattle, LA, like places that are expensive where the cost of living is high, right? Yeah. And or places that are traditionally overwhelmingly white. And there's not a lot of like people of color that live there. And so like if you wanted to get a job in the industry, you had to do what my sister and I did, what Travis probably did. Like you had to pick up and you had to move cross country, right?
Yep.
Right.
And now, like I have friends who are out back out east, and they're like, "Oh, I could get it. Are you guys hiring?" And it's like, "Yeah, we are." And you could get a job here. That's great. And you don't have to worry about moving cross, like, which is, if you guys have not moved, oh my goodness, most hated thing in the world.
You know, they say like the reason why it's so stressful. Like I remember reading some article that was talking about like people said that moving was as stressful as having to plan a funeral. And that is the reason I was just like, yeah, those two things really do equate.
Yeah. It's
levels of stress.
It's pretty stressful. It is one of my most dreaded things. But so it's fantastic because it opens up this industry to a wide variety of like additional talent that is not barred by the fact that they weren't born in California.
and really what it's also doing to just the way that we build software, right? And what we deem important to focus on. All those things have been amplified now, right? To the point where your avatar, your digital presence is as important as your real physical presence now.
It's true. I mean, you know, with the pandemic having basically like just about every convention either went away or went like pretty much fully online over the last 2 years, right? And in order to still try and maintain relationships with people that we used to see once a year at a convention, you still have to you still talk to them, but we talk to them like this, right? Like through this little video square and stuff as well. So like we've had to become a lot more technically savvy and a lot more comfortable with how we're perceived online. And it's no longer perception. It's like, yeah, you have an online persona.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also like really translated into how we develop games for good and for bad.
Yeah, it's very true. Very true. All right. So I think we are probably at the time we're going to move into talking about our long topic here. And as I mentioned, we're going to talk about high functioning teams today. As I called it, fantastic high functioning teams and how to build them. If you haven't had the opportunity to work on a high functioning team, I mean, it is really just an amazing experience. And it's also an amazing experience in the opposite direction when if you go from working on a high functioning team to one that's not necessarily, working in a more, in such an effective manner. But let's start off this conversation here by just talking about what is a high functioning team. Shanae, you mind giving a quick definition of that?
Sure. Man, I don't like. What is a high functioning team? I mean, a high functioning team essentially is a team that can finish each other's sentences. It's a team. It is a team that works so well together. Like they are meshed so well together. They're essentially they're anticipating each other's needs. They're fulfilling each other's like expectations. Like they're just working together like you hear the phrase well-oiled machine. It's like that too. Like that's a high functioning team essentially. And we've done there's been lots of studies over the years as to how do you get that? Because like if you've never been on a high functioning team, like when you're on a high functioning team. Like I've been on 2.5 high functioning teams in my career. I give that half because we were almost there for that third one. But then some executive stuff came in and it just jumbled it up, right? But like when you're on a high functioning team, you absolutely know it, and it is absolutely a beautiful thing because it is such a supportive and just like it's a supportive and a well structured place. Like it is supportive from your work-life balance to your mental health to like everything around it. And so they've done lots of studies on what constitutes high functioning teams. Is it the people? Is it the type of is it like a certain combination of disciplines? Is it like all these different questions and stuff? And we'll probably get into a little more, but there's a concept of psychological safety, which is at the core of creating a high functional team, high functioning team. And yes, you see the smile on my face because it's a very producer nerdy concept, and I love talking about this stuff.
Well, if it's a nerdy concept, then it works very well on our show here. Travis, do you have anything to add on that? Like, I mean, what would you say is like a high functioning team? What's your definition?
That's exactly it. Mm-hmm. It's funny because I've been on a few, mm-hmm. And just like Shanae said, when you're there, you know when you're there, and one of them, the most memorable for me was the first one when I was working at White Wolf, and we were working on the first edition of Mage, the Ascension, mm-hmm. And the owner who turned in the manuscript, we said, "Hey, dude, this is not it. Honestly, we got to do something." Then the other owner said, "Yes, let's go fix it." And we kicked him out. We said, "No, you need to go sit down too." Right? And they gracefully bowed out. Mm-hmm. And then we got the rest of the team together and we said, "We have a month to do this."
Yeah.
Okay. And I got the magic system. Someone else got this and so on and so forth. And we would sit in these rooms and just bounce ideas across the table at each other. And it just felt dope. It was in the pocket. And like Shanae said, it was a psychological safety because I didn't have to question whether or not my friend was actually doing his part. I knew it.
Yes.
Right. And it was, and when people ask me about that, I said that high, that high I've been chasing my entire career.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same. Same. Because like it's one of those things that you know it when you're on it. You're like, and the best and worst thing about a high functioning team is it always has a shelf life.
Yeah.
Always.
I was saying, you know when you're on it and you know when you're not.
Yes.
Right.
You know you're on it. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And you like just realize like everything's like clicking. And you're like, and then you just have this moment of sadness because you're like, I knew it couldn't last forever. You know it won't last forever. But like that's the thing. It's like it is, we talk about people being like we talk about it a lot in the concept of like singular folks. We talk about it for like artists being in the zone, or like performers or athletes being in the zone. A high functioning team is a whole team that's in the zone, and it can be sustained over the course of like days, weeks, or months. I've never been on one that lasted years. But it's also really fragile. And we know that even for performers and stuff, right? Like we've talked about, like if someone's in the zone, like keep them in the zone, keep them in the pocket. And the thing is, when you're working with a high functioning team, there's so many things that can come in and disrupt that. Oftentimes it's executive intervention, but it's not always. It could be as simple as like, hey, we hired a new person to add to our high functioning team, and it shook the makeup of that team just enough to sort of like bump you out of the pocket for a bit, right?
How do you get back into that pocket? I mean, right? Like, I mean, I get like, there could be like some, obviously anytime you hire a new person onto a team, it's going to kind of change the composition a little bit, right? Even if you have a twin, which I do, you're still, it's still going to change things a little bit, because like not everybody's the same. Not everybody thinks the same way or approaches problems the same way. So like, how do you make sure though that you're not, inadvertently like diminishing the output and the work kind of like that, that workflow is like that for a high functioning team?
I mean, it's hard to say that there's a one size fits all sort of thing, because like, every team is different. There's no like, hey, don't touch them, or make sure that you interact in this certain way in order to make sure a team doesn't fall out of that zone. But this is where it goes. This is probably where it's a good time to talk about the concept of psychological safety. And it's a concept that was, I think, developed by Amy Edmondson. She did a fantastic TED talk about it. I came across this concept like 5 years ago or something like that. And it has basically reshaped the entire way I think about teams and people working together and stuff too. And the concept of psychological safety, and like I said, there's a lot of research that went into this, not only from Edmondson, but also like places like Google they put probably millions of dollars into trying to figure out, like, is it a certain question that we ask during the interview process? Is it like a certain combination of someone's background or factors in order to like, figure this out? And what they really came to is this concept of psychological safety, which is that you have a group of folks who trust one another in such a way that they feel that they can make mistakes, they can take risks, they can take medium level risk and not be judged if they fail. Right? It is a team that can work together and accept risk together, either together or as individuals. And if something doesn't go right, it's not that was Tom's fault. Tom just messed everything up. Yeah, just go get Tom. Yeah, fire that guy. Right? It is a team that takes that risk on together and just trust each other. And it sounds really simple, but it's really hard to build, especially in work cultures. Right? Like, there's our tech work cultures, we often talk about games and then we talk about how where games can do better. We talk about tech can do better. Just in general, like American work culture, it's got some very deep like fault lines running all the way through it. And we have very much sort of a blamey culture around things, especially when things go wrong. Like it's very like America is very much America is very much if it goes right, I did it. I'm the boss. I'm the smart one in the room. Good work, everyone working for me. I was so smart to hire you. And if it goes wrong, like, oh, my team. Oh, I can't believe they got it wrong. Oh, let's fire, Jonathan over there. He's always been the problem. And when you eliminate those kinds of things, and you build this culture where people can actually trust each other, and they can, like Travis said, have a meeting where it's like, hey guys, this isn't it. And it's not a personal attack. It's we're working together with a shared common goal to achieve a very difficult thing. That means we can challenge each other. It means that we can we can joke with each other, we can be honest and open with each other, and it's not taken in that negative way because we understand that, like, hey, we've built that bond of psychological safety. It usually happens with small teams too. Like, I've never been part of a high functioning team that was more than maybe 10 or something like that. I'm sure it's possible for it to be larger, but they do, like, because, you know, as team dynamics get bigger, like communication gets more complex, and then, you know, things just start going off the rails. But yeah, that's I love this concept of psychological safety. I think it's absolutely interesting and brilliant, and it's I try and share it with everyone everywhere I go.
So here's a question I have. Because, you know, as you kind of mentioned, like, you know, it's really about, like, you know, getting people into that mindset that, like, you know, there's, like, eliminating that blame culture, which I know that America, I said, we are a very individualistic society over here in America. You know, we are very much about, like, I can do it. You know, it's me, you know, or if it went wrong, it's you. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't me.
It's only we when we mess up.
yeah, we did this, or, you know, like, but, like, how do you get people, you know, because we're all raised in this, you know, in very similar kind of, you know, societies and stuff like that. We're all raised in a lot of these similar concepts, and in the very individualistic culture. How do we break people out of, like, those old, like, mindsets and stuff like that say, hey, you know, I got to make sure I'm, you know, focused just on me and I'm doing things right. And, like, you know, if something goes wrong, I need to make sure that, like, I've covered my own butt so that I'm safe. So, Travis, what are your thoughts on this?
Be the change that you want to see in the world. I mean, honestly, I mean, it starts with yourself. You know, being in management, taking it seriously, right? And, you know, management gets blamed for a lot of stuff, right? I mean, every time it's management, you know, telling you I would do better, but management, you know, and, you know, and
rightfully so.
It's where the buck stops.
Yeah, you know, and sometimes, you know, being in management, like, you know, I remember one time I had an employee's wife just come up to me and be like, you know, you kept my husband late and you know, and I just took it, right? And then I thought to myself, I should be like, well, if your husband wasn't scrolling through, you know, all these social networks and posting all this other kinds of stuff, maybe he could get his work done, you know?
That wasn't a high functioning team, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
No, but it's a really hard problem to solve because there's so many things that are working against it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I don't at all mean to imply that management is at fault for everything that happens, even though it's fun to blame fictitious management as the boogeyman for everything. But yeah, it is it's also it's about personalities and team dynamic and management and budget and what project you're working on and how and people's personal lives, like are they like, what's their work-life balance look like? What's like, are they like, what is their life outside of work like, and how is that affecting their life inside of work, right?
Yeah,
it's super complex. And there's no formula that you can really, like, the psychological safety is the closest thing to a starting point, but there's no formula. There's no, like, okay, we put all these things in, and we on the other side of the assembly line comes a high functioning team.
Just listening to Sinead describe this just made me realize how complex my work is in a way that I have never fully and truly appreciated until this very moment.
Well, I'm glad I could do that for you, Travis. But, you know, I mean, seriously, it's really hard. And, you know, I've been on, I said, the 2.5 high functioning teams. The first one I was just a member of, and that was back at EA as like a test on our TQC testing team, our quality assurance team. And the second one was at a startup where it was a similar situation you had, Travis, which was we had this game that we'd put out. It was tied to an IP. It was tied to a movie IP. The movie came out. The movie flopped. Our IP holder no longer gave a crap about our game, but we still had like 10 people who were employed just to make this game. And we're like, how do we make this? Like, can we save this? Right? We no longer are shackled by the IP holder. Management sort of like, whatever. And I joined this team, and this team had been working like crazy hours. They were exhausted. Someone told me in one of our first meetings that they said the game wasn't fun. Like the team didn't think the game was fun. And when they argued about that at some point during development, management had told them, we don't have time to make it fun. We just need to get it out because it just has to hit that date. And so when I joined the team, they were demoralized.
Yeah.
They were just like, they felt like they're being forced to put out something that was less than their best purely to hit a date. They've been working really long hours purely to hit a date. They weren't proud of what they made. So I basically, I pulled everyone in a meeting, our biggest conference room. I locked the doors. I said, listen, there's no management in here. Let's just have a conversation. What went wrong? Like, here's a dry erase marker. Here's a dry erase marker. Let's just talk about it. Like, what went wrong? Because like, it can't possibly get worse.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that was basically it. And it was just folks they'd reached a point where they were just exhausted and they didn't have there was no need to have a work filter anymore. And that was really important because they hadn't been communicating with each other. And when they realized, oh, we all have the same thoughts about this, we've been sitting next to each other for like a year and no one had ever been able to express that to each other. And they realized, oh, we all have the same thoughts and we all have the same goal to like make this thing better. And I said, okay, cool. Now I know this. I'm going to go and advocate for us and get some space so we can make it better. Yeah. Like we can make this better. We had like a week-long session where it's just like, okay, guys, let's solve the problem. What's the problem with our game? And it's always fun when you ask that question to game designers because you're like, okay, guys, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And they're like, well, what if we added this? And what if we changed that? What if we did this? I'm like, no. I asked for a problem. They're like, but what if we added these things? And what if we did this? I'm like, what is the problem?
Right.
It's like we still have to make the same game.
Yes. It's like you're giving me solutions. I want to hear problems. Like if we define the problem, then we can come up with solutions. If you give me solutions before we define the problem, then there's a good chance that you wind up solving not the actual problem. We went through that whole thing and it was
you solve at it. That's very good. Yeah.
We just threw darts at a board and we're like, cool, we've got a dartboard. We were trying to change the tire. But no, it was really interesting, and it was a really great bonding experience for the team because like they realized that like, listen, we're all we've got right now, and like our fate is in our hands, and we've been given the space in order to be able to make the game we want to make. So let's make it. Right? Let's challenge each other. Let's create together. I had artists and engineers, and the engineer's like, this looks weird. Is that what you intended to have a spiked collar on the rabbit? He's like, it's not a rabbit. It's actually like a cat bear. And it's like, oh, actually, yeah, that looks rad. Can you add this? And it's like, it wasn't that usual interaction where it's like non-artist comments on an artist thing, artist gets mad, or like non-engineer comments on an engineering thing, engineer gets mad. It was because they knew they were all working in good faith together.
So it's all about communication and accountability.
It's always about communication.
Everything's always about communication.
It really is.
One thing I will mention, because we talked about this, right? Where like, you have this culture, you need to create a culture, this in this little microcosm of your team where people feel safe to be able to give feedback and receive feedback. By the way, that is one of the hardest things I know for people to be able to do is to receive feedback.
That's true.
Because you instantly, like lots of times, you instantly just activate your defense mechanisms, and start talking about, well, why things are, why you did this thing or why it's not your fault. Or and we need to really change people's minds on how to receive feedback in a constructive way and how people can give feedback in a constructive way as well. But it really kind of helps to create that culture of accountability. And the other thing I just wanted to mention on there, also just kind of on the whole thing about managers and stuff like that, right? Because yes, managers have a part to play in there if you are the manager of a team, because you are going to have, unless you are at the top of that of that pyramid, the very, very top, you are going to get impact or input and stuff like that from people above you, or you might get things that disrupt your flow and stuff like that. I've been a manager for several years and stuff like that. One of the things I usually say to folks is when something goes right, credit goes to my team. when something goes wrong, blame goes to me. Like it's my job to be able to kind of manage that and to shield my team from quote unquote all the crap that's coming downhill, like to be able to make sure the team can continue to work. And I mean, that doesn't mean like not sugarcoating stuff and not telling people what's going on. It means providing transparency and providing a translation of the feedback you're getting so that the team can actually like action on it, So, I mean, that's the other piece. I think, management definitely has a really strong part to play in this. I mean, so they shouldn't necessarily just be, of course, like the boogeyman or whatever, even though we do mess things up, Austin. Mess things up sometimes.
The seagulling, the swoop and poop. You swoop
the swoop and poop, But we should be part of the solution. We should be helping to make sure that teams basically get roadblocks out of the way and allow teams to actually work on what they need to work on. For sure.
You made a really good point too, because like you said, like there's like the way that management can often empower that is like management also needs to be recognized when they have a high functioning team on their hands. And even if it's a team, like if it's their team, if it's not, a team that they're directly a contributing member of, like they're like, oh, there's a high functioning team over there. How can I help support them? How can I give that?
Get out of the way.
Yeah, but not just get out of the way, but how do I get other obstructions out of the way in order to make sure that they've got the space they need in order to be successful? Go for it, Travis.
When I was at Warner Brothers, I had my manager was the senior vice president of new tech. And he said something to me the first day that frightened me, like to my core. And he said, Travis, I have discovered that the more I get promoted, the less my boss knows what I do.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, right? But in our position as production, sometimes that needs to be okay. You need to be okay communicating with someone who's a genius at that thing, right? Yeah. And trust them and empower them. And that's how you surround yourself with a high functioning team, is you say, you got this.
Yep.
Go do it. Yep. Go do you.
It's so
because you respect that lane.
Yeah. So very true. Because I mean, like, one of the things that, and I think I mentioned this before, where I said, I hate that idea of like, I gotta, the CYA, like I gotta cover my butt, to make sure that I'm okay with stuff or whatever, and like having to do paper trails of all these other things. I'm not saying like, obviously, there's certain places where you do need to do that, right? I mean, just there's, you need to do trust but verify, it's like that. And, of course, you do need to keep records of like particular conversations and actions and stuff like that, just to make sure people are aligned. And also be able to go back and do postmortems to solve, to see what did we do right? What did we not do right? What can we improve on? And you have records for that. But I hate like getting into that whole, like, I'm trying to do this so I can like cover my own butt or whatever, right? I tell people, and I told this, I tell this whenever I start a job, or we're sit down with my manager or whatever, I always say, like, I'm always going to do what I feel like is right for the company, for the team, for myself. All those things should align ideally, but I'm always going to do what I feel like is right. I don't want to have to feel in fear of my job. And I said, if I do something that's wrong and like, lo and behold, unfortunately, I get let go or something like that, I will still have a clear conscience because I'm still trying to do what I feel like is right. Because I'm not trying to get into like playing politics and like, like trying to like do empire building or other nonsense or whatever. Like I'm all about like, how do you create, because I don't think that helps to create like high functioning teams, frankly. That's just like someone not for themselves.
It's actually the exact opposite. It's like that too, right? Like, we're seeing this in I mentioned this labor movement that's going on right now. We're seeing this especially. I mean, how many different memes have I seen, or memes, or just I don't know if they're real or not, but they're entertaining. Of like text messages of like, a manager telling an employee, "Hey, I need you to come in tomorrow and work a 16-hour shift," and they gave him like 4 hours of notice, and the employee's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to do that." manager responds like, we're going to talk about this attitude of yours when you come in tomorrow. And the employee says, yeah, I'm not going to do that either. Like, I'm never going to come back here. Cause you know what? Like it's a buyer's market right now, so I can get a job at any other number of places that will treat me a little better. We talk about this stuff as being like a labor shortage or worker shortage or something. I think it's just a lot of people who are, like I said, this pandemic has helped re-establish and reset boundaries and priorities for a lot of people. Yep. Give them a chance to take a step back and see what they're willing to accept and what they're not. And we're seeing that. we're seeing people exercise, like establish and say, hey, here's my priorities. Bad management. Yeah, I'm not going to deal with that anymore. I'm going to go over somewhere else and try this place or that place or that place, And so like, I think that's actually a really critical thing in American work culture. We have this concept of a boss, right? We often use the word like manager or leader or boss, like interchangeably. They have like slightly different, like I use slight distinctions between them, but I don't want a boss. I want a leader. Or I want a manager. I want someone who can help me with my career, who helps me, like gives me guidance and things that will help me make me a better person and better at my job and just be a more well-rounded person. But oftentimes in American work culture, we're just like, no, that person's the boss. That means that they tell everyone else what to do no matter what. And that person just has to do it. Yeah. And if you don't do it, you're in fear of your job. And like you said, that fear is like the exact opposite. Like it's completely anathema to like the idea of a high functioning team. Yep. If you have people who are in fear of their job or of making a mistake or of anything that's related to the work culture there, then that's not going to work. And you're going to wind up like that translates into the work that people do. In fact, we make that joke about how like, I know it's a joke, but I've oftentimes I'll get food from a restaurant, someone like just like you gave it to you, it's sort of sloppy and stuff. And I'm just like, wow, this wasn't made with love. They just sort of slop this sort of thing together and you taste and you're like, yeah, like it just doesn't taste like it was made with love either. I think the same thing is true for like the games that we make and stuff as well. Like, if your games and your creative products are made by folks who are like living on the edge, constantly in fear of their job, like constantly exhausted, frustrated, feeling like they're threatened. Like that's like the product that you're getting is actually not their best. Like you might say, oh, well, one game of the year, it's still not their best. And we should really reconsider everything about that.
Amen.
100%. 100%. All right. This was a fabulous conversation here. And I love to hear all the insight from everybody, because this is, I mean, honestly, like I said, if once you've worked on a high functioning team and you have that experience, it's like that, you are like just like you said, Travis, you're chasing that experience to have it again. And when you're not on a high functioning team and it's just like, you're trying to figure out, well, what can I do to transform it? It's like that. So, this is a really, really important conversation. And I'd love, maybe we can share, some of the links that we were just talking about with like Amy Edmondson and stuff like that. Maybe we can share some of those in the chat for folks. So I'm going to go ahead and close up our show. I'd like to give a shout out to Digital Click for all the creative they provide for each and every one of our shows. If you'd like to learn more about techn00bians, hit up techn00bians.com. That is techn00bians.com. Please follow us here on Twitch. And if you like our vibe,
and we know you do,
and you want to learn more about game development and everything geek, please consider subscribing to our channel. You can also follow us on all our socials. We're on all major platforms. And if you're ever wondering what else geek we're talking about, and there's a lot, you can check out the schedule of shows on our Twitch page here for the Geekish Network. Anyways, that's it for now, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you all next week.